Cynthia here, and welcome. Today I will be presenting you with a year-ahead view for 2021 according to the energy and wisdom, spiritual guidance of the runes. This is a prophecy video, and I don't do many of these. Most of the predictions, or let's just say forecasts that I do, are astrologically based, which is much more scientific, at least in my opinion, much more systematic. But here we're delving into the realm of prophecy. And just like any other kind of forecast, remember that prophecy represents certain kinds of energy trends. And usually with prophecy, there are aspects of it that can be changed if we know it in advance. And then again, there are some aspects that cannot be changed, I find, at least in my practice. So we're going to dial into the runes today. I've done a reading for us regarding the energies of 2021, and I'd like to present that to you. But before we do that, I always like to begin these types of forecast videos, or shall we say prophecy videos, by calling in the ancestors, and especially because we're dealing with the runes here, by calling in the spirits of the runes themselves. So if you would please just join me for a moment of closing our eyes together, and let us open our hearts and our spirits to our ancestors, to the wise ones who have come before, our biological and family ancestors, as well as our spiritual ancestors, those who we are connected to through the wisdom of the spiritual path. We call you now, and we open to you now, and we ask for your guidance in relaying this message of prophecy through this video. Help me to relay the message more clearly, and help those who are watching and listening to receive more clearly. Also call upon the spirit of the runes themselves, runic energies. We honor you. We thank you for your creative power, your guidance, and your wisdom. And so it is. So, in addition to looking at the astrological energies for 2021, which I also have a video about that, but I wanted to ask the runes for their spiritual guidance. I wanted to ask them about perhaps what we should be thinking about focusing on, what we should be aware of, what are the hidden opportunities, the hidden challenges. So I did a special kind of reading for us, and just in case you're wondering the method that is done, and this is for those of you who are more familiar with the runes. Actually, I should say, for those of you who do not know the runes, I forget sometimes that people don't know. There's many who don't know. So I'm talking about the runes, R-U-N-E-S, and this was an ancient writing system for the northern people, but even before that, we believe it is an ancient, certainly an ancient magical system, and perhaps a divination system as well. So these are symbols, and there are 24 of them. And you can learn more about that if you want on your own, do your own research. But we're attuning with the ascended masters of the north through the runes. So especially, I believe, the energies of Odin himself, who is a very Mercury type figure, actually, if you want to think about correspondences. But anyway, so these are an ancient alphabet, an ancient northern alphabet, an ancient northern magical system, and I believe an ancient divination tool as well. So, reading on this ancient system, I have drawn 3 runes, and actually drawn is not quite the correct word. There's different ways that you can get the information from these runes, and of course you can draw them. They're usually on stones, for those of you who don't know, or clay tiles or wood, or actually they could be on a lot of different things, but they're little objects, and I'll show you some here. I'll just put a picture in. I should have brought my runes up, but I didn't. There you go. You can see some there, some of my runes. So you get the idea that they're small little objects that you draw out. Now, I do understand that some people read rune cards. That's not my thing. If I want to read cards, I read cards. If I want to read runes, I read runes. I do have some rune cards, though, and I did check it out. It's just not my thing. Okay, so this was drawn using these ceramic runes, and actually drawn is not quite the right word. I guess cast would be better. So for those of you who want to know just a little bit more about the method, I put all my runes down in this set on the cloth, and I mixed them up, and then I turned them face down, and then I mixed them up again. Gently, I ran my fingers over, mixing them around, and waited for runes to pop upright. So in other words, there were no runes upright. I just stirred them, and I looked for 3 runes to pop upright, and they did happen in sequential order. So I have a 3 rune spread here. And let me pause for a moment so you can see that. Now, at the end of the reading, or closer to the end, I did ask for a 4th rune to tie it all together, and that's not unusual for me. So that 4th rune, I just ran my hands over it and then drew it. So that one was actually drawn, but the other 3 were kind of stirred around. And quite random, it seems, and then not. It's not. So there's no way I could have known what I was picking. The runes were very thoroughly mixed. I will just say that. Okay, so that's a bit on just the technique of how it was done. And let's look at the reading. And so what we have here, and hopefully I'll remember to go back and number them for you in the picture. We have on the top here, you know, in this kind of triangle that I formed here, we have, well, first of all, I have formed a triangle. I have drawn 3, and the top rune is what I call, in this particular spread, if you will, I call it the Freya rune, or the, really, it's just the divine rune. Okay, it could be the Odin rune, but it's the idea of the divine energy flowing in, and what is the spiritual focus for the year ahead, in other words. Okay, so that's what we're looking at there, and there could be more said about that position, but we'll do that as we go through this one by one. And then the rest of the runes I read right to left. Hear me? Right to left. And anytime I lay runes out, you know, along that line horizontally, I tend to read right to left. Now, many people read the runes just like the cards, left to right, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I just prefer to read runes right to left. That signals to my brain that I am reading runes and not cards, because I also read on the tarot and other oracle cards as well. So I want to be in a different mindset when I'm connecting with my runes. And, you know, I could have laid it out the other way and read it left to right, but that's not how I did it. So I just want you to understand what you're looking at here. So we have the 3 runes, and in the top we have the spiritual focus, and then on the right, you know, lower right of the triangle there, we're going to have what I call the Frigga position. And so Frigga is the keeper of secrets, the knower of fate. So this is representing our hidden opportunities, but also obstacles, challenges. And then the last rune, which would be on the left here, is representing, you know, what we need to know, how we can release those opportunities, what we need for our healing, in other words, for rejuvenation, for breakthrough. And I call that the Idun rune. And for those of you who know a little bit of northern mythology, I am referring, of course, to the goddess who is the keeper of the apples. I don't know if she's really a goddess, but she is to me. keeper of the apples of immortality. So what do we need to know for our health and vitality, and to unleash the opportunity aspect of the other rune there, and perhaps deal with the challenge. So that's what we have here, and that's what I'm going to be going over. And listen, I'm going to try to do this in the shortest amount of time as possible, but these readings are not typically short, so please be patient. If you need to come back to the video and review it again, you can do that. In fact, I might cut this video into two, maybe, starting now with, we'll see. It would be nice to divide it up. So we're going to jump into the actual reading. And just be patient. If it takes a while, it will be good information, good inspiration, I promise. And remember, there is a fourth rune too at the end. We'll talk about that later when we get there. All right, let's take a few deep breaths in as we transition to the actual reading. Are you ready? I hope so. Okay, so let's talk about these runes one by one. I think that will be a good way to look at it, especially for those of you who are less familiar with the runes. Let's talk about the rune at the top of the pyramid or the triangle here. And here we have, in the position dealing with the spiritual influence, the spiritual guiding light, we have the rune that is called Berkana or Berkanaz. And this is the rebirth rune. This is the birth of new beginnings. So it's a lovely rune. I mean, I do want to say off the top, actually, before we even go over each one individually, this is a lovely rune reading. This reading for the year ahead of 2021 is much better than what I had expected, actually, especially looking at the astrology. This is the kind of reading that, sometimes you wish you could get for yourself. All of the runes are upright. None of them are reversed. And that tends to indicate a positive flow of energy. Now, I know not everybody reads reversals, but I do. And the runes know that, and they know they can communicate messages to me that way. So when the runes all come up upright like this, all of the runes are upright, including the final fourth one that I drew to tie it all together. This is definitely showing me that some things that are off will begin to right themselves in 2021. The other thing I want you to understand about this reading, all four of the runes, including the one that you're not seeing here yet, or maybe I'll add it in just so you can see at the same time, but all three of the major runes in the reading, and then the fourth one, they're all coming from the third row of the runes. And the third row, in other words, the runes, there's 24 of them, and they're divided up into 3 rows of 8. So they're all from the last 8, which is quite astonishing to me. What are the odds of that, statistically speaking? Well, actually, you could figure it out. I mean, you've got 4 runes out of 24. I don't know. Somebody who has time can figure that out for me if you want to. But it's quite unusual to see in a 3 or 4 rune reading all of the runes coming from the same row. And what's even more unusual is that they would all be next to each other in the row. Now, understand, I didn't draw them in the exact same order, but they all would be right next to each other. They're at the first part of that row and not the end. So the universe is really trying to show us that 2021 will be focused on the energies represented by the last row. And what are those energies? Those are spiritual energies. Those are higher connection energies, connecting with the higher self. Those are energies of community. Those are energies of finding your purpose, okay? And also connecting with the gods, connecting with divinity, and then being your best self that you can be to your family, to your friends, to your community. So there's a lot going on here on a higher level, is what this reading is telling us for 2021. And frankly, I didn't expect that. I kind of expected the reading not to be very positive, just, how things have been for the last year and how the readings were in 2020. I mean, they were worse than I expected. So it's nice to get some nice news, okay? It's really nice. It's really refreshing. And even if you just watch this far in this video, I hope you'll know that the energies are very refreshing, as indicated by the runes. The astrology, not so much, but you know, there's different sets of energies operating at the same time. So let's go back to that rune number 1 there at the top, and that is the rebirth rune, Berkana. She is also a goddess rune. Some of these runes actually have associations with specific deities, not all. Well, I mean, I think maybe you could stretch it and say it reminds you of this, but this is actually the rune of Birchta or Perchta, the birch tree goddess. So a very strong feminine motherly energy. And I feel like this is saying that we need to stay focused in 2021 on the new beginnings. And listen, with new beginnings here, I mean very new. Things are just getting off the ground. I mean, like that birch tree, the little sapling, right? It's like we're all little saplings. But it's also saying that the mother goddess energy, or the feminine aspect of divinity, you know, the universe, will be nurturing and protecting us, protecting you as you go about making those new beginnings. So it is a time to focus on new beginnings. It is a time to have hope. It's also a time to protect yourself. This is one of the runes of protection, in my opinion, for nothing is more protective than the mother. I mean, if you have a mother with her child and something threatens that child, I mean, have you ever seen a bear, a mama bear with her cubs, and what that's like? So think about that you have that protective influence around you, but it's also your job, so to speak, your role to protect yourself in that same way, and to think about the influences in your life and what you're allowing in, and focusing more on nurturing and not putting yourself out there into situations that are truly dangerous on an emotional level. I would think it's relating more to the emotional level than anything else. It could relate also to physical level. This isn't saying necessarily that you have to stay inside and lock yourself in your house, okay? It's not about that. It's about choosing experiences that are nurturing and healing to you. This is a rune of healing, so there will be much healing in 2021. And listen, I know many of us have just been totally scathed by 2020. I mean, it's raised us, you know, R-A-Z-E-D, not raised us up, but raised us, you know. It's like a cleansing fire came through, and I talked about that in my predictions last year for the year ahead. I said that many of the things that we counted on would be just ripped away, and they were. So it's been a difficult year. Of course, every individual has different experiences, and I know for me, there were many blessings, actually, and creatively, I thrived in some ways because I hurt myself dancing, and I couldn't do that, but then I took up the drum, and now I'm playing handpan, and I'm more rhythmic than I ever was, actually. So if I ever want to go back to dancing, I'll be better at that. I digress here. The point is for you that if you had struggles in 2020, as many of us did, and if things were taken from you, or just your sense of well-being, if you don't feel as good about the world, I think that this year can be the beginning of a healing. That's what this Berkana is showing us, this mother birch rune. And, it is a focus on healing. So if you can, focus on your healing in the year ahead. Focus on restoring yourself, and focus on new beginnings, not in a trying to be bold or overly impressive way, but in a small way, perhaps. But yes, new growth, new growth. This will be a year of new growth. I do believe this is what the runes are trying to tell us, or it can be. It can be if we're open to that energy. Now let's move forward in this reading here, and we're going forward to the second rune. And let me check my notes and make sure I'm right on track here. Okay, so here's what's interesting. This is the Tyr rune. The name of the rune, actually, it's called Tawaz, but it's also called Tyr, T-Y-R. because it's associated with the god Tyr. And in the natural order of the runes, in other words, there's a natural order to these runes, like how we would lay them out. There's a certain sequence, and then we mix them all up and read them, right? But in the natural order, Tyr would be first in that third row, and then Berkano would come second, and they're like a divine couple almost, you know, at least in the runes. Not in the mythology, they're not a couple, but in the runes. So you have this god Tyr, which is a very masculine. Some people associate it with war. I would associate it more with justice, but yes, there is a conflict energy here. Tyr fights for what is right. He fights for the cause of justice, and he sacrifices. He sacrificed his hand to bind the wolf of chaos. So we do want Tyr here because we have some chaos to bind in this world, okay? And so it's so good to see him here in this reading, but it's also saying the challenge in 2021 for all of us will be to bind that wolf of chaos in our lives, to calm down some of the chaos. And listen, here's something I've learned about chaos in all my years as a shaman, as an astrologer, as a human being. You can't get rid of chaos. If you try to push chaos down too much, in other words, if you try to be too neat, if you try to be too clean, too sanitary, like we have been in the year behind us, you know, if you try to stifle everything up and keep it inside, and you know, it has to always be in neat little order, then there's no room for innovation. There's no room to breathe, okay? And chaos will get through. It will always get through. In a way, that's what I see in the myth of Tyr and Ragnarok and all of that, is that we can only bind it for a time. We can only bind chaos to an extent. And if we go too far, the chaos will break loose, and then it will be worse than if we never bound it. So something to think about in the year ahead. But yes, you know, finding balance, maybe. We can have spontaneity. We can allow for a little bit of chaos, a little bit of unpredictability. It's not a bad thing, but perhaps we don't need quite as much as we've had. Then again, I don't know, maybe we need to allow a little bit more in. It just, again, it all depends on your unique situation. But there is a message here, I feel, about dealing with chaos as we move forward. And there was another reading that I did before this one for myself. It will not be broadcast in a video. Just looking for myself at the year ahead. And there were messages in that reading also about chaos with different runes. But the message was clear that we need to have strong boundaries. We need to establish boundaries with others, with ourselves, actually. So be aware. Be aware, again, of the influences around you and what you're allowing in. I mean, you can be in your own home, and there still now can be so many influences because of these little phones that we have, and you know, devices and social media in particular, and just media. I mean, so don't think, even if you're not around a lot of people, don't think there aren't any influences. What are you allowing in through your social media, through your YouTube videos that you watch, through your conversations, through the news? I think that if you're feeling vulnerable in any way, if you're feeling fragile, even if you're feeling strong and like you want to get focused on creation, on birthing, because Berkano at the top there is a birthing rune. If you're wanting to have new growth, I think that limiting your consumption of mainstream media, maybe any media, frankly, would be a good idea for a time. Because Tyr is a rune of sacrifice, so there's going to be more sacrifices demanded of us. And some of those sacrifices will be demanded from other people, and quite frankly, their demands will be crap, okay? And so that's where having boundaries comes in, and the other reading that I did, that I'm only sharing a little bit of here, you'll need to have boundaries. You'll need to learn to say no. You may need to stand up and say, hell no, okay? When unreasonable requests are made of you. And I know sometimes when people make requests of us that we don't like, you know, sometimes it just is easier to go along right? It feels easier, right? It feels easier. And I get that. I get that. But at some point, you have to look at, is it really easier? You know, if it's really no big deal, fine. But if you start to feel like your energies are getting drained, and you start to feel like, you know, you're selling your soul, you've got to look at that, okay? So make sacrifices, yes, if it's for the right cause, if it's for what you want to make sacrifices for. Just because somebody tells you you have to make a sacrifice for them or for other people doesn't make it right. And it doesn't make it right for you, okay? But there will be some of that. There will be more of that. And we've already had plenty of that, right? And we know that through, for example, from last March of 2020, we've been asked to make a lot of sacrifices to help ensure the public safety and good. And I don't know, maybe some of it's helped. Probably a lot of it hasn't, actually. I don't know that people knew that at the time, though. So, again, you just have to follow your own intuition and know for you. Know for you, okay? And with Tyr there is an opportunity, the Tawaz rune, there is an opportunity for you to be victorious. Tyr is a rune of victory and success. So definitely with this new growth rune, at the top, and then the rune of victory and success here, I think there are going to be some people making waves in 2021. I think that some of you are really going to be achieving your goals and your dreams. But there will be a cost. There will be a sacrifice. And you have to look at, too, are you on the right path? Because that's what Tyr demands, that we stay on the right path, the higher path for yourself and for others as well. Is it the path of your soul? If you do that, if you stay aligned with that, you will have success. I don't know if success will involve, material success for you. It just depends, but higher success. Now, let's look at the last rune. Well, it's not really the last rune because I drew a final rune to tie it all together. But let's look at the third rune, which is the last rune of the, first reading that I set out here. And this rune is sort of looking at what we need to know to meet the demands that will be placed on us through Tyr, the sacrifices that will be demanded, the challenge. Because although there will be victory, or there can be, remember, it does require effort on our part. It does require us rising up to meet the challenges of the new. And so here we have the horse rune. It's Ewaz is its name. And it's also known as the horse rune. And some people think of it as the partnership rune, although there's other runes that I would also look at for that. But the idea of teamwork and cooperation, it can relate to marriage. And I think that, anytime this rune appears, that we want to look at all of our relationships, including our closest ones, but any relationship where we're on a team together. It is upright. I like seeing that. So that shows that we'll be focusing more and more. That's how we're going to get through this transition into whatever the new is going to be, which, by the way, we're not there yet, okay? There is no new normal yet. There's just what we're in right now. We'll see. We'll see what the new will be. We're still in a transition year. And the horse rune shows that, I think, because it is a rune of movement. But it's also a rune of teamwork and cooperation, and it shows that we're going to need to balance, being true to ourselves and following our own path with getting along with others, with cooperation. And you have to walk that line because, sometimes, you do have to have the art of compromise, but you shouldn't compromise your own soul. That is the line I'm talking about here. It's one thing if you go along with something and it's not your favorite thing, but you're really okay with it. And I think that's fine. Really, I think the spiritual person should not have too many preferences. We all do have preferences, and we all have colors and patterns and things that we like and foods. And but the more you evolve on this path, let me put it this way, you may still have preferences, but the more expansive you become, the more open to new experiences. So then you don't get offended so easily. I think this is a true gauge of how spiritual a person is, how far you've come on your path, how far I've come on my path is by how easily I am offended, and the more easily you are offended, the further you have to go yet on your path. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. I mean, we all start in kindergarten, okay? So there's nothing wrong with being in kindergarten, but the more and more, one evolves and opens your heart and your consciousness to higher thinking, the more open you are to different points of views. And to a point, I mean, again, you don't want to do things that you feel would sacrifice the truth of who you are. So that's for you to discern what that is, because of course it differs from individual to individual. But with the horse rune, there is movement, there is activity in the year ahead. It comes through teamwork, it comes through cooperation. And I would say, as a spiritualist, as somebody who follows the cosmic ways, who lives the cosmic ways, the highest form of cooperation is with your own intuition and your own guides. So really, if you can, instead of just trying to set goals according to your ego and what you want, work in connection with spirit, work in connection with your guides. Ask them to help you see the highest expression of yourself, which will lead us to the next rune here in a second. Ask them to see what you can do, how you can be a better partner, how you can select better partners. Okay, here's another perspective on it. It's, again, very important to look at the influences around you. And this reading does, as I'm seeing ways now how this rune reading does sort of have echoes to the astrology for this year. And what I mean by that, it's also showing that our partnerships and our teams, our group identity is very important in 2021. It's part of the key to success because it follows after Tyr. Tyr is a rune of success, of victory. So it's telling us, hey, the path to victory is a path of partnership and teamwork, knowing the right people, having the groups that nurture you, like Berkano, right? Having the groups that are healing and uplifting in your life, even if it's just a small group, a small core group of people, that's going to be very important. But there will be movement. And also, too, with this horse rune here, we'll have to see, but I would say that it could bode well for travel reopening because it is one of the travel runes on a literal level. It's also shamanic travel, traveling between the realms. So even if you can't leave home or, you can't go far from home, we can always travel on the inner realms. So the runes are telling us that journeying on the inner realms, seeking answers within, also are favored. Again, having teamwork with your own guides, especially your own intuition as well. Now, I wanted to tie it all together, so I did ask for a fourth rune. Sometimes that just seems right to do. I don't do it always, but this time I did. And the fourth rune here is also part of the third eight, and I'll give you a second to see that rune. So this is Manaz, the man rune, or humanity. Man does not mean a gender, it means humans. And interestingly enough, in the natural order of the runes, Ewaz, the horse rune that we just read on, comes first before this one, before Manaz. So they too are a partnership. And one way to think of this, how I like to think of it, is, the horse rune is the totemic connection. So this also can be spirit saying, connect with your totems in the year ahead. And then this rune represents humans. So it's that connection that humans have. It's an earthy connection. This is representing the animal kingdom, of which we are a part of, but also humans and animals working together, having harmony. So there can be a focus on the environment, actually, in the year ahead. And, hopefully us thinking about how we can move forward with that. We've actually gone backwards in 2020 just because, the little things, like trying to go grocery shopping during the pandemic and nobody could use reusable bags, at least in my area, unless you wanted to bag them all, and even then they really didn't want you to do that. So then we're having more plastic, and of course many of the masks that people are wearing are made with plastic products, not the reusable ones, of course. But in times of distress like this, sometimes the environmental prerogative gets thrown out. But, we can decide for ourselves in our own lives how we act. So try to make that more of a priority. I think instead of thinking of being an environmentalist, which is fine, I'm all for that, think about your own personal connection with nature and how you're going to relate to that. If you start to think in that way, it really changes you. It changes your consumption because recycling is not enough, okay? Recycling is not enough. Getting your consumption levels more in harmony with what is a sane level, that can help, okay? And just connecting in different ways. I'm not going to lecture you on environmentalism. I think there's plenty of videos that do that already. But, we're talking about your heart and your spirit connecting with nature, connecting with your animal guides. And then the other thing that this rune is saying here is to stay connected with the higher aspects of humanity. I do feel and fear that this rune tying it together is saying, that we'll see all aspects of humanity, the extreme nature of the human animal in 2021. We will see the love that humanity is capable of, the understanding, but we also will see the stubbornness. We will see the self-righteousness that we are capable of, the destruction. That will be brought more up to the surface in 2021. I think the important thing is for yourself, because that's all you can really control or do anything about. The important thing is to stay focused on being the highest you that you can be. And doing the best you can, really doing the best you can in a higher self kind of way. And also, again, being part of a community. This is a community rune. And when you look at this design, you'll see this in some of the houses, actually. So it's connected to the dwellings where we gather together. And I know that gathering together is sort of going through a not being in style phase, but that's part of what makes us human, is connecting together. So hopefully in 2021, maybe the runes are trying to say some of those restrictions will lift up. I hope so. And that we'll be gathering together more. Certainly, that's part of being human. We are, pack animals, although there's always the lone wolf as well. But both the astrology and the runes for this year ahead are indicating that trying to be a lone wolf would not be the wise course of action. In this cycle ahead, you will need somebody at least who has your back. So think about that. And listen, I know relationships take energy, they take time. Even just maintaining casual connections, so-called, takes time and energy. So be selective about those connections, but do understand that nurturing them is very important so that they can nurture you back. And also be discerning about the human connections you nurture, and be realistic. I think this last rune is saying, that everybody is just human, so don't expect perfection. The people in your life don't have to be absolutely perfect. I mean, I think you want to look at the big picture, and overall, is the relationship nurturing, or at least does the relationship not totally drain you? Does it not pull you down? I mean, what is the big picture? What is the all-encompassing whole of the relationship? What is your all-encompassing whole relationship with the planet? Do humans leave waste and refuse? Do we use up resources? Yes. But if you leave the planet a little better than when you came in some ways, if you have acts of kindness to nature, to other people, then I think that can help offset it some. I think it helps to balance it. No one is without blame, really. No one, I don't want to use the word blame, but no one's perfect, okay? And yet we're all perfect in a way because we're all aspects of the divine. So these are things the runes are calling us out to focus on in 2021. And I hope you found this reading helpful. And if you have insights about what it might mean to you, especially if you're a rune reader, or even if you're not, if you just had an intuition about part of this that you'd like to share, I welcome your comments, and it would be nice to hear what you have to share. If you can help uplift others here, if you have that perspective, perhaps, about what these runes mean to you. let's just take a moment to thank the runes and to be in center. I'm so grateful for you all for viewing this video and for being together with me as part of my tribe on this journey into this rune reading for 2021. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This is what we say to the ancestors and to the spirits of the runes themselves. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And this is what I say to you as well, dear soul. Until next time, rune blessings to you and yours for a most beautiful, prosperous, happy, and healthy year ahead.